Welcome, all you folks out there, to the Victory Theater Bare Bones production of Backstory, an evening of true stories, poetry, and flights of fancy. A theme is always the title of a memorable play or movie, and then we invite our participants to riff on that title any way they like. They can take on the themes of the play or the movie, or they can take on the characters, or they can just go off on the words in the title. It doesn't have to be about the play at all. Tonight's theme, Twelfth Night. The play takes place in the fictional dukedom of Illyria, where the Duke Orsino is pining for the love of the lady Olivia. Olivia is pining over the deaths of both her father and her brother and will not entertain the suit of Orsino. Enter Viola, washed up on the shore of Illyria after a shipwreck that has obviously taken the life of her beloved twin brother, Sebastian. Viola, knowing that a woman alone will not thrive in a foreign land, disguises herself in the livery of her brother and, calling herself Cesario, applies to the Duke to work in his service. So Orsino tells Viola / Cesario of his unrequited love, causing Viola to fall in love with him, except that Orsino uses her / him as to be his emissary of love to Olivia. And of course, this being Shakespeare, Olivia falls in love with Cesario / Viola, and that's the setup for the high comedy in the play. Then there's the low comedy that involves Olivia's carousing cousins, Sir Toby Belch and the other jolly servants of the house, who devise a plot to ridicule the stodgy steward of the house, Malvolio. And because the definition of a Shakespearean comedy is that everything turns out good in the end, Viola's brother, Sebastian, turns up, not drowned after all, and everybody ends up getting married to the gender considered appropriate in Shakespeare's time. So, Twelfth Night was the very first play I did as a professional actor. And I'm going to tell you the story of how I got the job, because these are always good stories, first job stories. It was 1974. I just turned 28. You can do the math if you want. It was one of the times in my early life when I'd forgotten about being an actor. The first time was in high school. You see, I'd fallen in love with acting in junior high when I'd gotten to play Romeo in Romeo and Juliet and Jason in Medea, and had learned the whole role of Hamlet, but we never really actually staged that one because the drama teacher got pissed off at me because I wanted to play football after school instead of go to rehearsals. And so then I went to high school and went on playing football instead of doing theater, and then and social clubs too. And then I went on to UCLA on a football scholarship and got into the fraternity system. So UCLA was pretty much like high school for me until my last year there, when I started taking a few theater courses again. I wasn't playing football, and I was playing rugby, and I wasn't doing the fraternity thing anymore. And I did just one play at UCLA. It was outside of the theater department because I wasn't in the theater department, so I couldn't be in any theater department productions. But that was All's Well That Ends Well, which was our Backstory theme last November. I played the fop, Parolas. And so I was taking these theater classes, and the juices were starting to flow again. But then right out of college, I got married and had a kid, and I had to support them. So for the next 6 years, I worked as first a probation officer, then a mushroom farmer, then I substitute taught, did some construction, had an early morning paper route in Carmel. I was a janitor. Then I made a pilgrimage to study with a spiritual teacher in upstate New York, and became a social worker up there, and finally landed on brick and stone masonry. And I pretty much believed that that was going to be my work for the rest of my life, because I just loved playing with blocks, building blocks, and playing in mud and climbing around on jungle gyms, which is stuff you get to do if you're a mason. But then I broke my back and couldn't do masonry anymore. And my wife had left me, and I was back in Los Angeles and had just interviewed for a job as a summer camp director when I thought, summer. See, every summer, my junior high school drama teacher would take a bunch of us down to see the plays at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. So I called up a friend of mine that I knew from UCLA and asked if she knew anything about when the Old Globe was auditioning. And she said, yeah, they've been here all week and today's the last day. So I called them up and they said that that they'd already finished non-equity open calls and they were into equity callbacks. But then they said, if I came down there with two monologues, one comedy, one tragedy, one poetry, one verse, one poetry, one prose, they might be able to squeeze me in. So I ran down there quick as I could, someplace in Hollywood, and sat in a room and waited for hours, running these two speeches in my head. The two that I could remember, one was from Hamlet, oh, that this too solid flesh, tragedy, verse. And the other one was Parola's virginity speech from All's Well, which is comedy, prose. But as I was going over them in my mind, I couldn't for the life of me remember the end of the virginity speech. So finally I get called into the room, and there's several people in there. One of them is Craig Knoll, the producing director of the Globe, and Diana Maddox, who had been the dramaturge for the Royal Shakespeare Company. And so I walk in and they ask what do I got, and I told them, and they said, oh, we hear too solid flesh all the time, but we never hear that virginity speech. Go do that one. And I still hadn't gotten it to the end of it in my head. So I figured that if I just maybe if I just did it real fast, just barreled through it, then I'd get to the end and it would come out just by rote. And so that's what I did. I just went into it like a bat out of hell, just flew through that sucker. And I get to the end and I go, and they go, yeah, they laugh. And they say, that's very nice. And thank you very much. And I'm walking out. This is a big room. I'm walking towards the door. And your Craig said, Carl? I said, yeah. He said, can you fence? I said, oh, yeah, I can fence, sure. And thank you very much. I'm walking towards the door and he says, Carl? I say, yeah. He says, are you free between the months of da-da-da and da-da-da-da? I said, yeah, sure. I'm going towards the door. I've got my hand on the doorknob and Diana Maddox says, Carl? And I said, yeah. And she said, it's really nice to hear somebody move Shakespeare like that. And I got the job and moved to San Diego and worked there in that theater for the next 3 years. And as a Mason, I did that too. So that's my story.